point is that, even though we're all not Cristiano Ronaldo, the fact that this guy can play as many games as he does, at the level he does, at the age he does, at the body fat and physical conditioning he does, should be indicative of how effective low carbohydrate plans are in performance intensive environments. Okay, that's the key of this video. I want you to take away that message right there. Hey, my name is Anthony Romano, and in this video I'm going to review Cristiano Ronaldo's diet because it's basically a keto diet, and there's a lot of stuff we can learn from this, even if it's not fully in the direction of keto. But either way, I'm going to review this and explain a lot of the performance benefits Ronaldo gets as a result of his diet. So, a couple weeks ago in early January or mid-January, this report came out about Ronaldo's diet. And since I'm a big soccer fan, of course I saw it, but I also know how inaccurate British media sources can be with regards to news about soccer players / football players, right? And essentially, I saw this and first thing came to my mind, yeah, this is like a keto diet essentially with a couple a couple speed bumps, all right? That's essentially my gist. And I'm going to break down the diet in a moment, but I kind of let this sit for a bit, let it simmer for a little while, because I wanted to, everybody seems to accept this as it's a legitimate, accurate report of his diet. So I have now been enlightened to that, and I'm going to review the diet because my first instinct was to make a video on this, but, there's a lot of misleading reports out there. So I'm going to go through the diet. And keep in mind, if you're one of the people watching who isn't as familiar with keto, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to explain is going to be an exception for Cristiano Ronaldo because, the guy is just a beast and he's training all day long, and ordinary people can't get away with some of the stuff Ronaldo can get away with. So essentially keep that in mind, okay? Don't take everything as gospel from this video, but there are going to be some things we're going to learn because Ronaldo's the exception to the rule in this video. So, when we're talking about keto, right, for those of you who don't know, keto is not necessarily high fat, even though it seems Ronaldo has quite a large amount of fat in his diet. It's low carb, okay? The lower carb you go, and the lower you're spiking your blood sugar all the time, the more ketogenic you're going to be. And Ronaldo's diet is very heavy in reducing blood sugar spikes. So let's go through this. For breakfast, cheese and ham and low-fat yogurt, chicken and salad for lunch. Lunch number 2 is tuna, olives, egg, and tomato. Snacks, fresh fruit, avocado toast, so that's the most carb-intensive meal of Ronaldo's day. And dinner number 1, fresh swordfish and salad. And dinner number 2, steak and calamari. So, with the exception of that snack meal, there's basically no carbs in Ronaldo's diet. And the other interesting point here is not that there's simply a lack of carbohydrate. There's a high presence of fats. So, in the beginning, I said that, keto is not necessarily high fat, it's low carb. But ironically, you can get away with a small amount of carb if you're going to be consistently using this. This is what's referred to as a targeted ketogenic diet, and I have other videos on this. But that's a tactic that really only athletes can use because there has to be this rapid usage and depletion of carb stores, glycogen. So for Ronaldo, let's even if he has 200 grams of carbs from that, which is highly unlikely, he's having, probably 2 slices of toast and no more than 50 to 100 grams of carb from fruit. Even though fruit's a no-go on keto, I don't think it doesn't say fruit smoothie, okay? It says fresh fruit, okay? And so whatever the carb composition of that meal is, it's arguably not over 100 grams. So for most people, under 50 grams is kind of the threshold where you're entering ketosis. And although it should be from lower glycemic carbs that are going to spike your blood sugar less, overall, if you're Cristiano Ronaldo, there's a high likelihood that you're burning that off. But that's an advanced keto technique that's not the subject of this video. Right now, I'm simply establishing his diet is low carb enough to the point where he's using those carbs, and once those 100 grams of carbs are out of his system, what do you think the guy's running on, right? The guy he's 34 and he plays like entire games, and I know this because I watch every single Juventus game because I'm a massive Juventus fan, and I was overjoyed when Ronaldo signed with them a couple years ago. But that's a little personal side note. But I play all my soccer games ketogenic. I sometimes do a carb backloading or targeted keto approach to them. So it's not out of the question for Ronaldo to have, such an approach. Well, not saying that I'm at Ronaldo's level, but I'm saying that it's totally practical for a professional to do this. And I don't think it's a coincidence that one of the most dominant sportsmen of all time, especially just this game, is using such an approach, because there are inherent benefits to it, which is going to be the other half of this video. So there's his carb composition. And when we're talking about the presence of fats, right? Initially, somebody might see a low carb diet and say, oh yeah, he's just eating 200 carbs a day, right? When somebody's diet is this high in fat, it's a direct reciprocal relationship with their carb consumption. If Ronaldo's carb consumption is this low, he would not be able to function the way he does if his fats weren't as high. If I punch this into MyFitnessPal right now, it would probably say somewhere around 10 to 15% carb, and the rest of his fuel sources would be protein and fat. Now, there would be a considerable amount of gluconeogenesis, which is protein converting into carb, and same with a little bit of fat converting to a little bit of carb. But this is also a byproduct of being an athlete, an athletic person, and having an increased metabolic demand for those things, to make it simple. So, steak, calamari, fish, I'm not an expert on swordfish, but I'd imagine that it's just like any other fish besides tuna that's high in fat and protein. So, essentially, when we look at Ronaldo's diet from a glance, you have a very large amount of fat as a fuel source and a considerable amount of carb, right? So when we're going into game time and what benefits Ronaldo receives from this, I have other videos on sports performance and keto, and this is essentially the way sports games go when you're on a keto approach. The biggest benefit you'll receive is that you have a better ability to perform in a low blood glucose environment, okay? So what that means is you have a better ability to perform when your blood sugar is low. And what lowers your blood sugar? Playing a sport, doing activity. The longer you do an activity, slowly your blood sugar is going to go down. But if you're somebody who is eating more fat, somebody who is, pushing the needle towards the ketogenic metabolism, or at least your body is able to access it in some way, right? After it burns through that avocado toast, okay? An extra fat source thrown onto there as well. Once your body is closer to accessing the keto metabolism, even if it's not fully saturated in the deep end of the keto pool, your ability to perform in a low blood sugar environment towards the last half hour of a game is going to be on point. You're going to be able to perform a whole game. And, I know a lot of people will say, okay, Ronaldo's genetically gifted, or he's, worked himself into physical perfection, right? And I agree with that. But because Ronaldo's personally one of the athletes I try to model my training after. But when we're talking about, is he just lucky? Is he just gifted, right? I'd argue no. I'd argue, of course, it's a work ethic thing. But when we're approaching this from the standpoint of how is he able to perform at 34 the way he did when he was like 27, it's because there are other benefits to this fat metabolism. You're able to perform better in situations of low blood glucose. There's less inflammation going on because lower carb diets are inherently less inflammatory. High carb and high insulin, which is a byproduct of carbohydrate, is going to be promoting of inflammation because too much insulin, too much anabolic hormone going on, essentially overtaxes the body. It essentially puts too much reactive oxygen species as a result of too much carbohydrate metabolism. So lowering that carb metabolism is one way that I believe Ronaldo's able to hit so many training sessions. And of course, all athletes do this. But the thing you hear about Ronaldo is that the guy never stops training. There's interviews of other teammates of his who just like roasting him because they'll go to his house and he still wants to keep training. And this is a characteristic of low carbohydrate athletes. They can train for very long times. And the misconception a lot of people have is that keto and low carb approaches are, more geared towards endurance sports, right? Not so much the high intensity stuff. And that's false. I know it from personal experience in 8 years of keto dieting and coaching.
I know from experience, dude. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, when I see it in somebody who's at the top of their sport, like Ronaldo, right? Arguably the best in the sport, it makes sense that a person who is choosing such a plan is choosing it because it allows them to train so frequently, okay? And there's plenty of scientific, evidence to support this. I have other videos on my page explaining this. Some of them even have Ronaldo as the cover, I think. But the point is, there is less inflammation. You're better able to perform when your energy system is low, right? Your quick fire energy system, blood sugar. And the other side of that is a mental benefit. So not like conscious control mental. I mean, when your blood sugar is low, your body causes you to bonk. It causes you to want to shut down, whatever activity you're doing as a safety mechanism, as a defense mechanism from, having you burn out all your fuel. So let me explain. When your blood sugar is lower, part of the reason people hit the wall is because their body is telling them, hey, we're detecting low blood glucose in the bloodstream. Let's initiate the feeling of fatigue, the feeling of tired, okay? Because when you're tired, even though you still have glucose and carb fuel and fat fuel accessible, well, not so much fat fuel if you're primarily on carbs, but if you even have a bit of carb fuel left, your body's going to incite you to feel the sensation of fatigue so that you cut off the activity. It's a defense mechanism so that you don't, try too hard and hurt yourself or burn out all your fuel, which is an inherent downfall of a fully carbohydrate metabolism, okay? Now, last point I'm going to make here. This is probably the most important point of the video. So, if you're skimming through the video or if you just got to here, I urge you have to finish this point, okay? So the biggest indicator of, keto metabolism here is the fact that there's no carb loading at all in Ronaldo's diet, or at least from, the accuracy of this diet plan. There's no carb loading at all. So even if you aren't a person who's a fan of keto dieting or low carb techniques, it's undeniable that there's no high presence of carbohydrate fuel at the center of Ronaldo's diet. The center of Ronaldo's performance is coming from these fats as fuel and a carefully surgical amount of strategic carbs, which is another technique that I have plenty of videos on. But essentially, one of the biggest takeaways of this video is that there's no carb loading that you see a lot of other athletes doing, especially soccer players. Soccer players, and I know because I'm a soccer player and I'm Italian as well, so I know that there's so much like the pastas. Everybody's consuming huge amounts of these dense, complex carbohydrates, slow digesting carbs before games or the nights before. And there are ways to do that, but Ronaldo's not doing them. Ronaldo is consistently having low carb days, arguably ketogenic days every single day, if this is his diet plan, right? And I'm personally, it makes sense to me. I've read plenty of other stuff about his nutrition, but overall, the takeaway here is there's no presence of carb loading. So even if you're somebody who is, not too sold on the idea of keto, or you think I'm just trying to recruit you to my keto cult, the point is, if Ronaldo can get away without, slamming the gas pedal on the carbs, so can you. That's the point. The point is that, even though we're all not Cristiano Ronaldo, the fact that this guy can play as many games as he does, at the level he does, at the age he does, at the body fat and physical conditioning he does, should be indicative of how effective low carbohydrate plans are in performance-intensive environments. Okay? That's the key of this video. I want you to take away that message right there. And that's something I've been preaching for a while. But the fact that, there's a little bit more clarity on Ronaldo's approach being centered around that principle is, first of all, personally gratifying for me as somebody, focused on keto performance and low carb performance. But it's something that I hope can impact people the way that it really should, because this is a unicorn we're talking about here. This is a unicorn of an athlete running on this type of fuel. And spoiler alert, there's plenty of other of the most dominant athletic teams and individuals in the world that use these methods. This is why I have a series on this on my YouTube page. And some of those videos that are going to be made and added to that playlist are teams like the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks, and there's a couple other sportsmen as well, like I believe Zach Bitter, the best all-time marathon runner. A lot of these athletes that are the most dominant in their sport have a nutritional approach that leans more towards low carb than high carb, right? Even if it's not fully ketogenic, like the All Blacks and Zach Bitter, even if somebody like Ronaldo will perform better at a lower carb nutritional plan. So Why is a lower carb nutritional plan, even if it's not fully ketogenic, a better way to go? I personally believe it's because you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a little bit of strategic carbs and you're getting keto metabolism as the backdrop. It's the background noise. And that's personally what I try to incorporate with my clients when I'm talking about, approaching sports and athletic environments with a nutritional plan. Because what you want to do is you want to have your metabolic fuel systems the way they appear to be evolutionarily designed for. So what that means is we can only store a very small amount of carbs, about 2,000 calories worth. Why is it we can store seemingly endless amounts of fat? It's because that is the primary fuel system your body wants to use. Carbs are the luxury fuel source. They're the nitric oxide, and fat is the gasoline. This, if your body's a car, and I use this analogy often. But that's the thing. Ronaldo has a good amount of that nitric oxide, but he has a load of gas in the tank, the high quality, the premium gas in the rest of his diet. And he's able to use that, nitric oxide sporadically in the appropriate moments, but because his body is able to access this other fuel tank, right? Maybe he's even a hybrid. He's like a Tesla. He can use electric fuel as well, okay? As a result of this keto metabolism, which he's absolutely accessing. In how much capacity he's accessing that, I can't put a number on it. But I bet you if you measured Ronaldo's blood glucose and his ketones after a game, they would be in a ketogenic area, no doubt. Because you can't have that level of consistent performance. You don't see Ronaldo sipping on Gatorade the whole time, running around with a Gatorade bottle in his hand. Okay? What you see is essentially him playing the whole game at 34 years of age while still being the best physically appearing person on the field. Okay? And last thing I'll say, because I want to make this, hit every single mark for people of varying, understandings of keto and low carb, is that the more intensive somebody's metabolism is on using fat for fuel, the more likely they are to be lean. Okay, this is a basic principle. It's not 100% accurate for every single individual, but the more you see somebody look ripped, it's because their body has a better ability to access fat as fuel, right? This is literally, think about this for one moment. Anybody who's overweight or obese, right? Maybe even yourself, who knows? It's because your body isn't as good at using fat. It's better at storing it, okay? So either way, no matter what your goal is, no matter what nutritional approach you like, you want your body to have a better ability to actually use fat as fuel. And that is primarily what accessing the keto state does, okay? So essentially, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this one, this is probably one of my favorite keto diet breakdowns, Cristiano Ronaldo, because there's a lot of things we can learn. I have other people on this playlist that are fully ketogenic. There's other people who are, using targeted keto techniques like TJ Dillashaw, the UFC fighter who later got suspended. But essentially, there's a lot of variance in these techniques. And I personally think the best way to explain Ronaldo's is keto is the background. He's able to rely on it no matter what. And this is also why you see him being such a clutch, big game player, because ketones are amazing fuel for the brain. They're steady and you don't have any volatility in your energy levels because there's no rapid blood sugar spiking, which is a huge thing if you know anything about, athletic sports and timing of your carbs, right? Chances are if you're watching this video, you played a sport before and there's been those games where you ate something before and it just didn't hit you right. You felt weak in the game or something along those lines. And that's probably because you mistimed your blood sugar spike or you simply, didn't have a consistent stream of energy. Keto eliminates that problem entirely. So the point of this video is not to tell you, eat like Ronaldo every day. The point is open your mind to keto techniques because the most dominant athletes in the world are using them. And I don't think that's just coincidence. I think there's a rhyme and reason for it. Okay? That's it for the video. I enjoyed this one. Leave me some comments. Leave me some other suggestions of people you want me to review low carb, keto, fasting, nutritional plans for. Go to my website, romanoketo.com. And besides that, like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Peace.